great day to be here this morning to worship God. And it's a great day to just be together to talk about this, which is very simple. Convicted by my past. It is an important subject to talk about. We're going to be talking about the story of Cain and Abel, along with another story also. But how many of you, let me ask you this very simple question here. How many of you remember when you were still under the delusion that you could get away with something? You remember when you were under that delusion? How many are still under that delusion? Anybody? Anybody still under the delusion that you can get away with something? Okay, good. That's good. Listen, my dad was probably not unlike most of your dads, okay? In this way anyways. My dad found out everything. I don't know how. I'm still baffled at some of the things that he knew about. And yet, he found out everything. I got away with nothing. Nothing as a child. He was able to find out things that I figured there was no way he'd find out about. I would travel 20 minutes, 30 minutes from my home, and he would know that I went there. I don't know how that happened, but he seemed to know everything. So let that be a lesson, by the way, to all you teenagers out there. All right? Your parents always know what's going on in your life. Sometimes they wouldn't even tell it. Sometimes it's years later. We're sitting around the Thanksgiving table one year, not too many years ago, and my dad actually said, "Hey, remember the time you did this?" And I went, "I didn't know you knew that. How did you know that?" And yet, you don't get away with anything. There's no don't live in that delusional world. All right, you don't get away with anything. So this morning we're going to be talking about Cain and Abel, and that idea that you can get away with something, that you're not going to be convicted. Cain, a very simple story that we just read. It's the account of Cain and Abel, where Cain rises up and kills Abel because of brotherly jealousy, sibling rivalry, however you want to put it. He wasn't pleasing to God, and his brother was, and he didn't like that. He wanted to be pleasing also, and so, which doesn't make a lot of sense that he would kill someone to become pleasing to God, but anyhow, we'll get back to that in a second. Cain and Abel is that great account where we see that person who is just not doing enough to please God. He's going through the motions. Cain is going through the motions trying to please God, and he's not doing a very good job at it. It's appropriate that this past week we celebrated, I don't know how many of you knew that this past week was Sibling Day? Anybody knew that? Now, I know some of you did because I saw your Facebooks and you putting pictures up with all your siblings and stuff. Sibling Day. Side note on that, by the way, I'm still waiting for Philly Cheesesteak Day and, Go Fishing Day and all those. It seems we have a day for everything here. The story of Cain and Abel is definitely a story of jealousy that's gone too far, but it's more than that. I'm going to show you a video clip here. I've got a couple of video clips, and I'm going to preface this with we haven't had a lot of luck with technology. All right, everybody remember that? I actually took the time and ran through this twice on this computer on this screen, and it worked. So if I click this button and it doesn't work. Anyhow, I'll leave it like this. I want to show you this clip. It's from the movie Flywheel. Anybody see the movie Flywheel before? Good. I'm glad only a few of you have. Flywheel is a great movie it really follows the story of Cain and Abel, and I'll show that to you as we go. But I want you to look at first clip is the longest clip of them all. It's only about a minute long. The other clips I have are just seconds, but I want you to watch this clip for just 1 second.
Ben, we are live at J. Austin Motors in Albany, where things have been very busy ever since that story broke on national news about their honesty policy. Joining us now is the owner, J. Austin. So, Mr. Austin, have things really been that different since this all happened?
Oh, that'd be an understatement. One day we're just trying to survive, and the next day they're lined up to buy cars.
Now, I know about the power of the press, but it would seem like you already had a good customer base. Have you changed the way you've been doing business at all?
Well,
Well, you've been in business for over 2 years now,
right.
and you've always run your business honestly? What is she doing? Well, Mr. Austin, we had the opportunity to speak with a gentleman who claims that he worked with you during your first 2 years, and his view of the operation is quite different. Let's take a look.
Honest dealer, that's not how I describe Jay Austin. I've seen him rip off tons of people. Teenagers, young couples, old ladies, even a minister. He even tried to teach us how to rip people off. And that's why I left, because of his lack of integrity.
What? You snake! Mr. Austin, did this man in fact work for you?
Yes, he did.
And is he telling the truth? Did you in fact teach him how to cheat your customers?
I'm ashamed to say this, but yes, I did.
So you're admitting that you were dishonest in your sales?
I admit I used to be dishonest, but I have had a dramatic change in my life.
Yes, sir. But why should the public believe you now?
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the land, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer of the earth." Nothing is hidden from God. Nothing is hidden from anyone. Actually, it's a delusion to think that the things that we do, we are going to get away with. It's a delusion to think that someone isn't paying attention, that someone won't notice. As we look at this, I want you to look and understand why we try to hide our mistakes. The first and foremost reason we try to hide our mistakes is very simple. Sin is humiliating. Not one of us will stand here today and stand up and say, "Listen, I'd like everybody in the congregation to know all of my sins," and we'll list them out. Actually, we won't even have to go that far. How about I have the guys who did the Lord's Supper pass out pieces of paper and everybody write down all their sins, and we'll read them from up here with your names, right? Anybody willing to do that? No, we're not willing to do that. Why are we not willing to do that? Because sin is humiliating. We don't like the fact that we have sinned. We don't like the fact that we have wandered away from God from time to time. We don't like the fact that we have done wrong in the sight of God. We do not like the fact that we are not as holy as we would like people to see us as. The Pharisees in the day of Jesus had a real struggle. They were trying their very best. Actually, great book, by the way, The Holiness of the Pharisees. Great book, talks about the idea that the Pharisees were simply trying to be the holiest they could possibly be. And so in doing so, they removed themselves from the people. And so it's a good idea and yet a bad idea because it becomes so fake to everyone else. We cannot live in this idea that if we just gloss over the sin, then it's going to be okay. Sin is humiliating. You know why it's humiliating? Because it's wrong. It should be humiliating. I do not wish, pray, hope, however you want to put it, ever in your lives where sin is not humiliating to you. I hope that every day of your life, sin will continue to be humiliating. Because when it stops becoming humiliating, then it becomes very, very, very easy to sin. It becomes very simple. And one sin leads to another and another and another. And we're not humiliated by it at all. I want you to, for just a moment, I want you to think about the sins that you have in your life, that you have done in your life. Now I want you to think about not just those little, what we would deem those little ones, okay? I don't believe that there's any levels of sin. Sin takes us away from God, period. But I want you to think about those sins that you're the most humiliated about. Those things that you have done that you hope and pray that nobody ever finds out about. That nobody ever finds out about it. That's what sin is. It should be humiliating. If that came out, I want you to think about that for a minute. If that sin that you're thinking, or those sins that you're thinking about right now, if that ever came out, what would be the changes in your life? Would there be people who wouldn't stand by you anymore? Would there be people that would look at you in a different way? Sin is humiliating, and it should be. It should be. The car dealer that you saw there in the movie, he had a drastic change in his life. He had given his car lot to the Lord. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story, because if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a great video. But the first part of it is he is a dishonest car salesman, and he changes his life. He gives the lot over to God, and all of a sudden God blesses him with great sales. And then this happens, what you just saw. And he has no answer for the sin that the things he had done in the past. And the folks, listen, I know you don't have an answer for it either. The only answer is you were wrong. The only answer I have in my life about my past sins are that they were wrong. They took me away from God. Sin is humiliating, and it should be humiliating. Oops, wrong way. We believe we can get away with it. Here's the problem. This is why we try to hide our mistakes. We actually believe, for some reason, in the backs of our minds, in our subconscious, wherever it is, anybody who ever studied psychology, you'll probably have a good answer for this, but we try our very best to think that we can actually get away with it. We can actually get away with it. I think I've told you the story before, but I was never a very good liar, which I'm glad, but I know that because looking back, I think I've told you the story, but my dad had me sitting at the table, and I was eating a cereal, and I was probably only 5 or 6 years old, and my dad had me sitting at the table, and I was eating my cereal, and it was a cereal I really didn't like. We didn't really have that many different cereals back in those days, kids, so, there were no marshmallows in this one, all right? And so I really was picking at it because I didn't want to eat it. And my dad told me I couldn't go out and play unless I finished my cereal. And so he left the room, and I got rid of it. My dad called me inside just a few minutes later and said, "Did you eat all your cereal?" I said, "Yeah. Yeah, sure I did." He said, "Really? You didn't dump it in the garbage?" No. Why would I do that? Then why is your bowl and spoon in the garbage? Didn't have a good reason for that. Never been a good liar? That's okay. That's all right. We don't get away with things, okay? Needless to say, here's the bottom line. No matter what, God always knows what you've done. There's no way around that. You may think you've been able to fool somebody, some people, but the bottom line is God always knows what you've done. So there is no getting around it. There's no way we can hide from our mistakes. So if we can't hide from them, we might as well accept them. Accept the fact that you are human. Accept the fact that we make mistakes. Making the mistakes isn't the biggest problem. It's what you do after that. That's what makes the difference in our lives. If we give our lives to Jesus, if we have given our lives to Jesus, if we've gone through the waters of baptism for the forgiveness of our sins. Say that with me. We go through baptism for what? The forgiveness of our sins. Sin is humiliating, but we are forgiven of sin. We are forgiven of our sins. God knows all of them. We can't hide from them. And so we are able to have that forgiveness. We can have that forgiveness through the blood of Christ. We cannot hide from our mistakes.
Lord, I'm angry. I know I deserve this. Would you help me, please? I cannot defend myself.
Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you're driving me from the land. I will be hidden from your presence. I will be restless wanderer of the earth. Whoever finds me will kill me. Cain didn't understand that God was still looking after him. God was still going to look after him. Even though that there was punishment that was coming with this, that there's always consequences to our sin, God is still there. God is still there. And that's what we need to realize. As Cain realized that, so did Jay Austin here, right? He realized and said there's nothing he can do after that interview. There's absolutely nothing he can do because of the fact that it has been found out. It's true. He wasn't honest all the time. Cain is found out. There's nothing hidden from God, and Cain knows that God knows that his brother is dead. And that he did it. He has no way of knowing. And so he says these words, my punishment is more than I can bear. Again, I go back to the fact that sin is humiliating, and I want you to understand that as we look at sin, we need to realize there are consequences to sin. There are consequences to sin. And as we look at those consequences, we realize the consequences to sin is death. The consequences to sin is death. That's what we deserve. We can say the same thing that Cain said right here. Excuse me. My punishment is more than I can bear. I want you to think about that for a moment, because I want you to think how serious we're talking about this morning. This is very serious when we start talking about the fact that we are talking about not being ever again in the presence of God. Sin removes us from that presence, and we will remain away from the presence of God for all eternity without Jesus. See, I think we've lost sight of just how bad that really is. I really think our culture is trying to put that in more politically correct terms. We want to glaze over it. We don't want to talk, we don't hear the fire and brimstone sermons maybe as we should. We don't understand how devastating, how eternal our punishment will be if we stay in sin. We don't understand. You want to understand a little bit, read Luke chapter 16 sometime. How the rich man goes to this place, and he just wants to go back to warn his brothers never to come there. Folks, we need to understand exactly what the Bible says about the fiery lake. That they're thrown in the fiery lake. We don't want that. Sin is humiliating. Sin will be found out, and our punishment for sin is way more than we can ever bear. Here's something else, though. The reason is because we do not want to accept responsibility. We don't like to accept responsibility. Right? Hey, let's face it. How many of you have never passed the buck? I don't see any hands. Because we've all passed the buck one time or another. Why? Because we do not want to accept the responsibility. If there's one thing I think the Bible tells us about, besides the love of Christ, besides the love of God, it teaches a lot of different things, but I think the Bible teaches us that we should be responsible for our own actions. That we should continuously be responsible for our own actions. We don't have to blame somebody else. I'm not saying situations don't happen and we get caught up in them. We're in them, though. So we're responsible for them. So it's our responsibility to take care of them. When we don't like to take that responsibility, we like to blame others instead. Boy, it's easier, isn't it? It's so much easier to blame others. It's simple. It's so simple. You know, unfortunately, my brother was younger than I was when I was growing up. So guess what? Yeah. He made me do a lot of things. Really did. Got to blame him. But unfortunately, my dad looked at it the opposite way. That the oldest child should be the example. Anybody get that as a child? Yeah? Oldest child's the example. So if my brother got in trouble, guess whose fault that was? And he didn't even have to blame me. I don't even understand that one. But we like to blame other people. Blame anybody. We can blame the economy. We can blame the government. We can blame our brothers. We can blame our sisters. We can blame our husbands. We can blame our children. We can blame anybody we want to blame. But the bottom line is it comes down to that we have a personal responsibility in this life. So either stand up and take care of it, or I guess blame others. I don't think blaming others is the right way to go. Cain blamed his brother. He killed him because he blamed his brother, really, for bringing that good sacrifice. What are you doing? We like to justify, too. Right? It's a favorite thing to do. I only did it because you did it. That's why you only did it. Because you did it. We can try to justify it any possible way, but the fact of the matter is, you did it. We have to take responsibility. But most of all, we don't want to bear that guilt. And it all comes back to that, doesn't it? Anybody like to feel guilty? Not really, right? None of us want to feel guilty. None of us want to feel like we are a bad person. None of us want to feel like we are not up to par. We want people to look at, anybody want people to look at you and go, ooh, sure, I don't know about them. Right? No, we want people to look at us as good people. We want people to look up to us even. We don't want people to look at us and go, wow, they're guilty. We want to be a people that are doing our best to show the world the light of the world. But in order to do that, we have to accept responsibility.
Jay, I want to ask you something. God's blessed you because of your faithfulness and obedience in the last couple months. But what about all the customers before that?
I know. I've been thinking about them. I was reading about Zacchaeus this morning. He returned money to all those people he took advantage of when he did his tax collecting. That's a painful thought. I mean, not only would that take a lot of money, I have to eat more humble pie than any man alive.
It's not about you escaping discomfort, Jay. It's about you honoring God with what He's blessed you with.
That's 2 years of customers. It's probably half of my cheated.
Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. In the video clip, he's struggling with that idea that he has to make amends for all the things that he's done wrong. He has to make amends for the things that he knows he did wrong. In this passage, Cain is angry at the Lord. After the Lord has found him out, he's angry. Why are you angry? Why are you upset? Did you not know it was wrong? Of course you knew it was wrong. There's nothing we could do. When it comes to our personal responsibility, we have got to take responsibility. We cannot blame others. We have to just stand up and say, we knew it was wrong in the first place, and we did it. We've got to be a people who are willing to go that extra mile, to go that extra step. He mentioned Zacchaeus, and we just talked about Zacchaeus a couple weeks ago. The idea of Zacchaeus was when the Lord came to his house, he said, listen, he wanted to make sure that everyone understood, if I cheated anyone, I'm going to give him 4 times as much as I cheated him. Because he wanted to be right with God. That's what this is saying. If you want to be right, be right. There's nobody in here today. I guarantee there's no one in here today that doesn't know what it means to be right with God. When it comes to what we do and how we live, you know the right way. You know the right way. So, live the right way. I know it sounds too simplistic, but it's the truth. You want to be right with God? Live right. Period. I love the next thing here. Nope. We try to take the easy way out, though. The easy way is never the best way. It is never the best way. Everything that you have worked hardest in your life for is probably the sweetest thing in your life, isn't it? Isn't that true? Nothing that's ever been handed to you was the sweetest thing. The things that you have fought for, the things that you have worked hard for, those are the things that you like, that you love the most. Those are the things that you take care of the most. We need to remember that repentance will cost us something. It's going to cost, unfortunately, for Cain. Not sure whether he actually repents or not, but he ends up being cast out. It costs us something, because sin costs us something. But I guess the easy thing is, or the thing to remember always, is that Jesus did not take the easy way, ever. You want to be right with God? Live right.
Now I have rebuked you. I have defended you. Now it's time for you to stand up and be a godly man worth defending. Do you understand me?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
All right then. May God bless you.
It's that simple, isn't it? It should be that simple. Stand up and be a godly person so that other people will see you as a godly person. So that more people will come to be godly people. We are not talking about calculus this morning. It's very, very simple. Be right, do right, live right, so that everyone else will see it and come to the same conclusion. It's that simple. Don't hide your mistakes. I think it's important, as I conclude here, I want you to understand, don't hide all your mistakes. I know that there are those deep, dark secrets that you don't want anybody to know because you don't feel that it's important for them to know, that you don't see any fruit and any reason for them to know. But I want you to understand something. That someday, somehow, some way, there is going to come a day where you're going to meet up with somebody and they're going to be going through something very difficult in their lives. And the fact of the matter is, I believe that God brings us together. I believe that God brings people together because of the likeness and the things that we struggle with. And so someday, somewhere, somehow, God's going to bring you somebody that is dealing with the same exact thing that you've overcome. And you're going to be able to share with them. You don't have to hide it. You're going to be able to share with them how you overcame it. Don't hide your mistakes. Accept the responsibility instead. Accept the responsibility of the fact that you did them. Just as I said before, if you want to be right, just live right. If you've done wrong, just accept it. and let's move on. Let's move on. Don't live in the delusion that we can go in some other direction. Never take the easy way out. Folks, there are so many different things in our lives, in our spiritual lives, that we need to overcome. We struggle every single day. Every single one of us struggles every single day. There's not one of us in here that says, oh yeah, this past week didn't struggle a bit. It's just not true. And if we all struggle every single day, if we all struggle, maybe not in the same ways, we need to realize that we need to grow in strength with each other. Hold each other up. Hold each other up. Give each other the strength to continue through this week, continue through the day, continue to live for Christ. That's what's important. Never take the easy way out. And when it comes to everything in our lives, I'm going to tell you this very simply. Instead of being politically correct, I urge you, I implore you, and I pray for you today that every single one of us stays convicted. We're convicted by the things we have done. But we are saved through the blood of Christ. If there's anything that we can help you with, if you need anything or need to understand more about the gospel of Jesus, we're going to sing a song, and if you need anything, please come as we stand and sing.